as we've mentioned, before, in 2012, Charlon and I linked up while in the Netherlands, along with Cyril Fennings, who was my co-founder for Unified St.Maarten Connection, USC. And we started talking about, St.Maarten, how things were going. At the time, we were just, 2 years into country status. And we decided, eventually we'd like to move back home and enter the arena, to try and make a contribution back to the community. In the political sense, because you can do that without even being in politics. And the thoughts, were to originally join an existing party, but after a while we said, for us to use the vision that we all had in mind, we needed to start our own thing.
Okay, and what was that vision?
That vision was to improve quality of life for everyone on the island. If you talk to different people in different communities right now, there's a disparity between who's enjoying a high quality of life and who is not. But for us, to move a country forward for true nation development, everyone has to have at least a standard of living, like everyone. So.
What are the people saying, new party, PFP, what are you guys hearing on the road?
Well, we've had several town hall meetings so far. We've had a town hall meeting in St. Peter's, we've had in Ebenezer and South Reward, we've been to Sucker Garden, we've been to Belvedere,
You did all those town meetings already?
Already.
Wow.
Yeah, and the people, they're crying. The people in St. Maarten, they're hurting. And, we feel the pain with them. And, we decided not to do the traditional rallies of, going, renting a container, a flatbed, and screaming at the crowd, we every neighborhood in St. Maarten has its different challenges. So we want to go to the community and talk with the people, find out what are the issues in this particular community. So that's what we've been doing.
There's a lot of people don't know, but there is a lot of poverty here on this island.
Yes.
I don't even know if do we have a middle class anymore? Because
it doesn't feel like it's.
It doesn't feel. There's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of kids and stuff that are going to school without lunch, and somebody told me
without breakfast.
Without breakfast. Told me the other day they had to pick up and drive a teacher to school. Teacher.
That's crazy.
I was like, what? Okay. So what if I was to ask you guys three things? What are the three things on the top of your list for your party? If you guys were to get into accomplish, what are your first three things that you guys want to accomplish?
Oh, we actually have 5.
5?
The title of our manifesto...
I asked you for 5. Okay, but okay. You can give me 5.
The title of our manifesto is Fight for the Future, Transforming a Nation in Recovery. Yeah,
okay.
You'll see the hashtag as well on our social media. And it focuses basically on 5 strategies to support the overall vision of improving quality of life for all in St. Maarten. And those focus on financial stability for government and the people, energy that makes sense.
Okay.
So tackling issues that the fact that we're falling behind in renewable energy, when compared to our partners in the region. Healthcare, improved healthcare, and health in general for the people. So sports programs and general activity programs. Education is, I would say, if we had to pick a top priority, it would be education.
Okay.
So looking at special education needs, vocational education, and overall the educational system on the island. And I miss one? But yes, infrastructure.
Yeah,
infrastructure and waste management. Yeah.
Okay, so those are your 5 things in your manifesto that you guys are looking to.
Yeah.
With this upcoming election, how you guys have done so many meetings, which you told me. What is the overall response from the people that you're getting?
It's been pretty positive.
And before you answer that question, because you know how we are here in the Caribbean country, when you vote for a party, you stay in those party lines because your mother did it, your father did it, your brother did it, but your grandfather did it, because now you have a new political party. What are you guys feeling? What are you guys hearing?
Okay, well, basically this is where we tap into the education part again. Educating the people why and how to make a conscious decision when it comes to voting. Because like you just explained, how it's been done for all of those years, people basically vote for the same party for no particular reason. Yesterday on social media I posted that someone told me they're going to continue voting for this party because this political candidate helps them pay school fee and uniforms every year. Yes, now we've been having elections every year, so maybe that comes out good for the person, but it's not about that. Voting is a much more conscious decision that you need to make.
Yeah.
It's so.
You either make the decision
Yeah.
for the one-time benefit, or if you vote for a party that has a plan to, increase your purchasing power as a consumer and as a citizen, you wouldn't need someone to help you cover school fee and uniforms. And that's really PFP is more about tackling the root of the problem instead of putting band-aids on bullet wounds, because that's largely what has been happening at many levels in the country since before 10-10-10 actually, because I think the perception is that since 10-10-10 things have been this bad, but these problems did not accumulate overnight. It didn't go from the 9th of October 2010 and then suddenly spring up on the 10th. And I think that a lot of what the discussions we've been having with the communities that we visited has been that it did not take a night to create these issues. It's not going to be solved in 4 years, but we are also prepared to work with different people in the community, from private, public sector, and non-profits, NGOs, etc., on a long-term vision, because that is what's really lacking. It's been very ad hoc. Some of the decisions and the moves that have been made leading up to and after 10-10-10, and it's time sometimes to take a step back and assess, and then you can actually plan, because planning is the best form of prevention that there is.
True. One thing you're probably going to hear a lot as we get down to the nitty-gritty of mudslinging, or whatever you want to call it, you're going to hear a lot of the other parties say you guys have zero experience. You have none experience. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're getting into. But you, Melissa, you do. Your father was a former prime minister.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that counts as experience, but I'll let you get to that. I don't know if that counts as experience. But you're going to hear a lot of that you guys have no experience whatsoever. What do you say to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, well, that's an easy thing to say at a new party. It's an easy thing to say at young aspiring politicians. But to answer that question, for myself, I've studied urban planning. Urban planning is a study where you take very heavily into account the growth of a country and how to plan for the increased growth of a country. That hasn't been happening on St.Maarten. Yeah. In my studies, my teachers told me that I'm the first one from St.Maarten at the Rotterdam University that did this study. So, going back to when me and Melissa first met, we also decided, yes, we need to build experience. We need to gain experience, gain knowledge, and actually, know what we're going to do and do it well. So I've applied. I got a job on St.Maarten at the Ministry of Romi. When I just moved back, I was a policy advisor. From then, I've moved up in ranks, and I became the manager of the permits department, of building permits, infrastructure permits, and hindrance permits. So I have a lot of experience under my belt, especially when it comes to the government side of things. Yeah,
okay. And I think everyone that we've been seeing for the last I would say 30 years or so, started with no experience. They banked on their education, they banked on their professional experience in private sector, maybe they own their own business, etc., as a driving factor as to why they were fit, to govern the country. And I think it's a little unfair to look at us and say that, oh, you're too young. Theo Heiliger is 24 when he was first elected, and they had to learn from those that came before. And I think I think people are maybe afraid that, like some other young individuals, I guess, in public and private sector, that we're not open to learning. And that's really the crux of the matter. If you're open to learning and learning from those who have the knowledge and who've come before you, instead of shutting them out, because I think that's also a discussion that we've gotten, like, oh, don't ignore every old head, because, and then of course that's not the plan. You have to lean on experience while also holding your own mind, and therein is the difference. It's not that this is a party that someone says do this and we're gonna do it. It's that you have to weigh what is the benefit for the country, is this advice sound, and then you make your own decision going forward. And that, I think, is also part of our appeal. There is we're all new aspiring politicians, as Charlon said, and we are not tied to any previous agenda that exists. I am a new party leader. We're not under any party leadership that has been there before and just expects people to toe a line. And I think that's also very critical when you think about moving St.Maarten forward.
Okay. And all of our candidates share this mindset.
Yeah.
Okay. How much, you Melissa? How much? What's the word I'm looking for? How much advice do you get from your father?
I mean, we get some. And sometimes I think he may think, I'm a bit stubborn when I say, well, I think we're going to do it this way instead. But like I said, it's good to hold your own head and to have your own way forward. And we make decisions as a team. And that I think it was important for us that we can make decisions as a team.
Okay.
That not everyone is going out doing their own thing. There's some uniformity to it.
Okay.
From the ideas that we put down on paper to the t-shirts that we're wearing and the posters that we put up. All of that was critical for us. And the question about my dad has come up a lot, but for the last 5 years he's been trying to convince me not to do this.
Really?
And I make it a point to say that because I think the rumor is that this is being driven by I guess we had like a conglomerate of old heads driving the party, but this is a decision that Charlon and myself and everyone who's with us has taken on their own. And it was 5 years of, you sure? Are you sure? Are you positive?
So you've been thinking about this for 5 years now?
Longer than that, 7.
20,
Yeah, since 2012.
Oh, okay.
And I think the first couple of times we told our parents, they said, oh, okay, yes.
But Melissa's dad has told me the same thing. Are you sure? Don't do this. The politics on St.Maarten is a nasty world.
Yeah, the volatile climate.
But what is happening now, it's only natural for Melissa's, it's her dad. My parents are doing the same. It's natural for your parents to support you.
Yeah.
So when you see them with us, it's a parent showing their support
for their child. Yeah.
For their child.
Okay. A lot of current situations going on here on the island. So let's take one of big topic, of course, the airport and the Dutch and the money. Of course, if you guys were, let's just say hypothetically, if you guys were to win the election, you guys were in control of this island. What would you do from what's in place now when it concerns the Dutch, the airport, the money? What would you guys do? Would you guys do anything different? Is there something that you guys want to implement? Work with the Dutch? Don't work with the Dutch? Do this? Go? What would you guys do?
I think right now the agreements were signed, so the airport is finally moving forward.
Right.
I think that everyone wished it could have been handled a little faster with a little more political maturity. I think because that money is there to be used, and I think that delaying it for whatever reasons is not the way to move forward. We already have a bureaucratic behemoth, which is the World Bank, managing this whole situation. And not that I have anything against the World Bank, I just think that and I think we all agree that it was the wrong mechanism to manage this. They're not an emergency response organization. They are a long-term project establishment. So for us, I think trying to work better with all our kingdom partners, not just the Dutch, because we all carry the same passport. So not just the European Dutch, I guess I would say, but also our neighboring islands of Saba and Statia. Better collaboration and cooperation with them, I think, is also very critical to our growth. And I think we very often think of ourselves as a silo, and we cannot continue to act like that. We're not alone, basically, in this region or in the world. So we have to adapt. Okay. And make decisions that are in the best interest of us, taking into account our reality as a small island in the Caribbean.
And a one-pillar economy.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move over to the dump. What would you guys do if you guys were in power? The situation over at the landfill, the dump, or whatever.
Yeah, the dump is there. The dump is an eyesore. One of our goals for the dump is actually being able to establish a realistic closing date for the dump. We basically need to stop dumping trash there. Otherwise, it's going to continue to get bigger. It's going to continue to have problems. So we're looking at finally being able to establish a waste incinerator, not waste to energy, just a simple waste incinerator that we can burn the trash. That is going to be burned in such a way that it's not environmentally damaging.
So I was going to say you're going to have environmentalists on top of you
but
for that.
There are options for environmentally friendly incineration that actually we can copy from Saba.
Okay.
Because that is the way that they're moving forward in one instance with their waste management.
There are actually many reports that the government has that goes back dating to the 1980s that's talking about St.Maarten needs a waste incinerator.
Yeah, we playing musical chairs here with government, so
there's
there's going to be a new report every year. So basically,
just different colors.
What is you guys overall? What would you like to happen this election for PFP? I mean seriously, what would you like to see? Would you like to see a coalition? Would you like to see you guys just all out win? What are you looking for? What do you guys want to see for St.Maarten for this election?
I think a coalition in any respect is probably what's going to end up happening. We have a voting culture here and a political culture where I don't think we've had an outright, a majority for quite some time, if ever. And I think that it's going to end up being a coalition. If we are invited to be a part of it, we will weigh that decision against, our own principles and our own manifesto and plans, and whether or not the party that the invitation is coming from matches or at least aligns with that in some way. It's for us. It's really about making an impact and showing people that there's a different way to do politics. There's a different way that all of this can unfold. It doesn't have to continue to be more of the same. That there are fresh choices and new choices on the horizon, and if we can have that impact, then whatever happens after, it's really early to talk about what can happen.
I'm just trying to play the wizard.
A lot of it boils down to what the people want.
Yeah.
What do we want? Do we want a government that is, a party that is going for political stability in this country? Do we want a party that represents the people and fairness and equality?
Yeah.
The people need to make that right decision. And the people have been choosing existing parties for all of these years and getting the same results. Every day we turn to Facebook to complain. Yesterday traffic was a topic. It's just,
and people made the note that traffic is not something again that has just popped up.
No,
but it will continue to get worse, and that is what happens, as Charlon mentioned, when you do not plan for country growth. Many things here we did not plan for our further development while still developing, from the amount of healthcare professionals that we have, from mental health, regular general practitioners, etc. To engineers, for example. Those plans I don't think were really taken into consideration. So we were growing, but not, planning for the growth.
True. Speaking of healthcare, what is your overall view of healthcare here in St.Maarten?
Well, in our manifesto, we mention a couple of things that we'd like to look at, which is improving, for example, the provision of mental health care on the island. I think Mental Health Foundation is an incredible organization that has been doing great work, but they need attention. Also in the support of children's mental health. We do not have psychiatric care for children on the island. We do not have a forensic psychiatric center. Mental health facility itself is too small, and they cater to a very large number of the population. And that is important, especially when you look at shocks such as Irma and the PTSD that follows something like that. I think we all experienced some of that after the passing of the storm, some worse than others. And I think, had we had certain provisions lined up for mental health, that would have been better cared for. And in terms of healthcare itself, one of the top priority things we have is to actually pass what's called the BIG legislation. It basically governs the registration of medical professionals locally. That's a very large reason as to why you don't really see many local healthcare professionals returning, because you need to be registered to be able to practice, but you cannot do that here. That would also require for recertification of our healthcare professionals, which is also important. Lifelong learning is something that we as a party champion, and just because you have a position doesn't mean that you stop learning. I don't stop learning in my profession. Charlon doesn't stop learning in his. You don't stop learning in yours. Things change. Better technologies, better ways of doing things. So that's also an important thing we want to look at with regards to healthcare.
Okay. Now, what about healthcare? You guys have anything about healthcare just in general for everybody, or anything, or because some people don't have. A lot of people here don't have health. Don't have normal.
I think maybe you're alluding to like a national health insurance,
right? Exactly.
The thing that we've been explaining to people really is about numbers. It's about having the numbers to pay into a fund or a plan so that everyone can receive that coverage. A lot of comparison is made to the French side about the carte vitale, but you know, the carte vitale is something that is backed not just by the people on the French side of St.Maarten, on St. Bart's or Guadeloupe, but it's also backed by the 40+ million people living in France. So that fund is substantially enough to provide the residents of St.Maarten with, you know, the healthcare that they enjoy and the coverage that they enjoy. So it's I know that some recommendations were made by White Yellow Cross. Like Charlon mentioned at the start, we've never been in government, you know, so we would have to first see, you know, what discussions have been had, if any, to move that forward, and what recommendations were received from the actual people in the field, because that's also important, that you take into consideration the feedback you get from entities like Mental Health Foundation, White Yellow Cross, SMMC, etc.
Okay. One thing I see a lot about on this island, especially this time during the Christmas season, is that we are the melting pot of the Caribbean. We have so many nationalities from so many different islands. But one thing I see is that a lot of the money here from this island doesn't stay on this island. You drive by the MoneyGrams and the other places, the lines along, there's so much money that is not staying on this island. How do you guys feel about that, and what do you think about that?
Well, you know, we have a section also in the manifesto that's talking about, you know, tax reforms.
People, just let y'all know, I did not read that manifesto. So.
Okay, but I'll break it down a little bit for you.
Okay.
You know, we want to actually make people, we want to increase their spending power on St. Maarten. So that's for the locals. But when it comes to the people that are visiting the island as well, you know, we're looking at maybe, you know, changing the tax system so that, you know, tourists also directly pay, contribute towards our you know, the local
economy.
the local economy. And you know, so we have, give or take, how many million tourists every year? And you know, they basically they stay in their hotel room, but all the or in the ship, but all the purchases that they make locally, you know, we get no tax revenue from that directly. You know, we have an indirect tax system. You know, but we really maybe need to explore, you know, the possibilities of a direct.
Because like not to cut you short, but like, you know, like you go to Bonaire, for instance, and Bonaire's a island where you want to go windsurfing, you want to go scuba diving, you got to pay. You got to get, I think they call it their nature card or some kind of. So if you want to go scuba diving, you got to get a card to go a license to go scuba diving. You want to go windsurfing, you got to get a. And that's money that.
And there are different ways that you know, countries and cities around the world have, because you have to also take into account our infrastructure is overloaded by visitors, no matter how much, you know, they come for a time, but at that time we are overloaded. So you have, for example, in Europe, many cities have a city tax. Even when you stay at a hotel, you have your regular taxes, but you also have a city tax that you have to pay. An environmental tax is also something that you know, I think we need to look at, because we are, when you talk about waste management, we're collecting that waste. And I think as well, for keeping you know, money on the island, you really have to look at those institutions and you know, how they are operating as well. I think.
And we're even thinking about a disaster tax. Because if we had a disaster tax in place since, let's say, Hurricane Lewis, you know, that's
that'll be implemented for the tourists or for us?
For everyone.
For everyone. Okay.
For everyone. You know, then we can be able to tap into those funds. And not just, you know,
it doesn't have to be anything exorbitant, and I think that's.
But you know, you say a dirty word when you say tax.
Of course,
and that's definitely something that we don't want to campaign on. But you know, the government also needs to have some kind of auxiliary emergency funding in place, so that we don't have to be dependent on. In
a way that is fair, I think, because right now our tax system, nobody really knows what they have to pay. You have people.
Some people are not paying taxes.
My experience since returning as a young professional. Paying taxes in the Netherlands compared to here, it's very confusing every year. So I just pay someone to do it for me, because in the Netherlands, you know, it's very simple. It's you answer a couple questions and you know right away what you owe, what you have already paid, if you're getting money back, etc. But here, it's very confusing for the average citizen, I think. And that's unfortunate, because you want things to be simplified for your population, that they can, you know, be good citizens in the right way, but not that they file in what they think is the correct way, and then 6 months later to a year, it's like no, here's an assessment.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yeah.
So you also want to eliminate that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that really have to be looked at carefully. I know through some discussion that the legislation is there for tax reform. It's just more a matter of now finalizing the conducting of the research to see how we move forward, because you don't want to make a snap decision either, because that could have very negative consequences. But I think that you also need to prioritize that research and then prioritize the steps moving forward, and that ties into political will and political maturity to make tough decisions, even if it may be uncomfortable for the population and for you as a politician in the short term. In the long term, does it benefit the country? And that's really what matters.
Okay.
Yeah.
We touched a little bit on tourism. So much to talk about tourism, but basically you hear a lot of talk about Mullet Bay now. Mullet Bay. And also, of course, that's our main, we don't export things. We have tourism. We love our tourism. Right. So what do you guys, PFP, have in store? Let's put Mullet Bay and tourism. What are you guys going to do to improve it, or, here in St.Maarten?
Well, I think for tourism, when it comes to destination marketing, because that's been the hot button topic for a while, the establishment finally of an actual authority to handle our tourism marketing. And I think you do not have to reinvent the wheel. I know that they spoke to Aruba at the start of the discussion for the STA, I think they called it, but then it kind of got changed up a bit in its structure and its appearance, and I think that is where the hiccup began. So you want to establish a tourism authority that functions as other examples that we have in the region, because you take away the politicizing of tourism marketing, and you just hand it over to the authority, and the authority will do what they are instructed to do. Once you start to hamper it with requirements or favors or whatever, once you start telling it what to do, that's where you kind of lose the essence of what it's meant to do. And many things here could actually be addressed by establishing an authority. One thing we talk about when it comes to infrastructure is a road fund. Correct. Which is essentially where your road taxes should go into to maintain our roads, which would improve traffic flow, overall longevity of the vehicles that we use here. So when it comes to, and all of that impacts tourism on its own, so those authorities can work together to ensure that the level of which we operate as a country is kind of increased. And once you have that, I think tourism will take care of itself. But you really have to have the will to set it up, let it breathe, fund it, and then just let it
function on its own.
Let it function, because Aruba is a perfect example of what a tourism authority can accomplish once it is set up in that way and allowed to flourish.
Right, because you look at Aruba, they have every name brand hotel you can imagine.
Yes.
Is in Aruba.
There you go.
And what about the Mullet Bay situation? How do you feel about that? How does PFP feel about that?
Well, Mullet Bay is basically you have the beach and you have the golf course part of it. The beach, the beach is already public land. It's owned by the government, and the private part, it gets tricky, because if we want to take it back, we're gonna have to pay for it. And St.Maarten is not the government is not in any financial situation right now where we would be able to afford it. The going price for properties down that side of the island are 1,000 square meters, $1,000 per square meter or more. So I don't see the government acquiring Mullet Bay anytime soon.
No.
That's just you don't see that happening anytime soon. So you think that's just political fluff?
No, I don't think it's fluff. I think because I guess you're referring to the inquiry and everything that's going on.
Yes.
But and we don't have any particular issue with that. But there are other areas that could have been maybe lumped under that inquiry. That I think people have to look at. All the beaches basically, to just put it under a blanket once and for all. That the beaches belong to government, and whatever properties that are there, you move forward handling that on the legal side. But I think what Charlon has said is right. We believe that you should definitely work to get it resolved, because it is prime commercial property. It's a prime area, but for it to be resolved overnight, I don't think, or even in a year's time. I'm not really sure. And again, we're not sitting there, but he has the experience coming from Vrami, so he has we have the knowledge of what the cost might be to government to get that back truly. Then I would say, and I don't think financially that we are capable of doing that. Even to buy back land, to establish projects and such. I don't know.
One of our fellow candidates, number 4 on the party, he works at the
Domain Affairs. Yeah.
Domain Affairs. So basically the real estate division of government.
Right.
And I know that he was he suggested to include reserve funds on the budget for this real estate division of government to buy back land, and be able to buy land from private landowners,
right,
so that the government would be able to develop it. And the government has not done that. So unless the government starts taking strategic steps in reserving land for land purchases or strategic land purchases, we're going to still be lagging behind, and it's just going to seem like a wish list.
And this is something that you guys want to do?
Yes.
Definitely. You need to strategically purchase land as a government.
Yeah.
If you want to, let's say for instance, we want to build a parking garage in Phillipsburg, someplace in the center of Phillipsburg. We should be strategically have the funds readily available, reserved for land purchases, to buy the land where we're going to put that parking garage. But
as it stands right now, that's not happening.
That's not happening, and it takes planning, and it takes a vision to accomplish those kind of things.
We have a finite amount of land here.
Yes.
This is an island, and we are a small island, and I think too often the comparisons are made where it comes to land, to Curacao, etc. But Curacao has land available, in not in abundance, but more than we do.
Oh.
And that is the idea then behind strategic, probably repurchasing of land that maybe has been sold or given away in the past. But until you set up that fund and that plan, that's really not going to sound good.
Yeah.
Party for Progress. We're here with the number 1 and number 2 candidates here on the Workload Show. Before we go, we see a lot of political parties come. We see a lot of political parties go. We see a lot of political parties come out for election, and then we hear nothing of them until there's another election. This is what Party PFP is going to do?
No, absolutely not. We didn't form for this election.
Correct.
We actually announced our launch. We announced that we would be launching on the 21st of September. That was a Saturday. The Sunday, we got the news that government fell. And the Monday before our launch, elections were called. We launched Friday, September 27th. So the plan was to actually launch, and all these meetings that we've been having, the town hall sessions, were already, on our calendar, because that was the purpose of launching PFP now. It was to, begin engaging with the community, and in preparation, yes, for a run in 2022, because we just had an election.
Right.
So that was always the mission, and that will remain the mission. We launched our turf initiative, which is the United Recycling Front, which is to build community engagement when it comes to keeping your communities clean, because you can't keep beaches clean if you don't keep your community clean.
Right.
So engaging with the residents of the different districts that we're going to, and that will continue. Thereafter, once the election is done, we're going to publish our turf dates for 2020.
Okay.
But right now, it'll get kind of lost in the mess. But that is already the plan. So that is a long-term project that's going to continue. It's not something that we just dreamt up, for election. It was it's the brainchild of Marvio Cooks, our number 5 candidate, and that is something that we committed to rolling out as soon as we launched, and we did. So we're not going to disappear. That's something that we.
I hope so.
No. That's not the plan.
Anywhere.
We're not going anywhere.
We're here to stay.
Yeah, basically, was never part of the plan, and it's not going to become part of the plan now.
Okay. How many candidates you guys have?
8.
8.
Yeah.
Why 8?
We were very selective.
Okay.
When adding candidates, the reason it took us 7 years to even get to the point of incorporation is because we wanted to make sure that whoever came aboard matched with the overall vision and the overall principles that the party follows.
Quality over quantity.
Yeah, quality over quantity. And we've had many conversations where, the question is asked, what's in it for me? And at that point, the conversation can end.
Say word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've had other political people come to you to ask to join your party?
Not necessarily political, but we've had people who maybe want to get into politics who have asked that question, but that's not a question that I particularly want to hear, because it's not what's in it for you or me or Charlon or anyone. It's what is best for St.Maarten.
Country above self.
Yeah.
Sure.
And country above self means taking difficult decisions that may not be popular, but in the long term are going to benefit everyone here.
Okay. All right. Before we leave, so I'm going to give each of you guys 3 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. I know how politicians talk. So whoever wants to go first goes first, but convince me why I should. One thing I noticed about you guys before I get to that, you guys don't do individual posters. Did I?
We have some.
Oh, you do have some.
We're paired with each other. Basically.
Oh, basically.
So
oh,
very few.
Yeah, very few. And
yeah, I've noticed that driving around.
The reason why we have some individual posters is because the group posters that we have spread out around the island,
right,
they don't have our candidates' numbers on them.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So people also need to know what the candidates' numbers are.
Okay. All right. I see.
So that's basically the reason.
All right. So before we go, I'm gonna give you each 2-3 minutes to tell me why I should vote for you or PFP. So who wants to go first?
Rock, paper, scissors?
Rock, paper, scissors.
You go ahead.
All right. Well, I'm candidate number 2, Charlon Pompier, on the Party for Progress, and I plan to champion housing on St.Maarten, so the affordability of housing, making sure that people can get, who are interested in developing housing, that they can get their building permits faster, to streamline processes, from in Parliament, that is, something very critical for me based on my experience working in government already. So I believe in Parliament, I'll be able to champion that from, a different level. Also, flowing over to the quality of life, so improving the quality of life, I stand for excellent infrastructure on St.Maarten. I believe we need someone in Parliament, which is, now myself, who I believe that we can have perfect infrastructure on St.Maarten by establishing a road fund. So we need to be able to funnel taxpayers' money from motor vehicle tax, for example, into a fund that is dedicated towards road improvements, the building of new roads, the maintenance of roads, that is not going to be micromanaged by government. So when election time comes around, you're not going to be able to be like, okay, you know what, let's put a speed bump over here quickly.
You talking about Sensor Bay Road? No, just kidding.
Let's not patch this, resurface this road, this little stretch here quickly. This stretch that has been, everyone was driving over these bumps for the past 2 years, but now magically, because it's election time, we get a new road surface. None of that. The roads need to be managed by a road fund, so that it is professionally managed, and government has very, very little to do with it. Also sewage. Almost all communities that we go into, and we've had town hall meetings, sewage is a major issue. It is unhygienic. We've heard stories of kids playing in sewage, and they end up with ringworms and all kind of health issues. So proper legislation that people, they're conscious about how to prevent sewage. We're thinking about, we plan to establish a sewage authority, a sewage and waste authority actually, and the sewage and waste authority is going to manage the sewage collection. It's going to centralize sewage on St.Maarten as well. It's going to minimize the individual septics that people have in their homes, so that you're not going to get your neighbors leaking cesspool or sewage system running, overflowing. The cuckoo water flowing into your yard.
You can say it.
And lastly, zoning. St.Maarten needs some proper zoning that is going to benefit the entire country. Not zoning that is, is good for this area and it is disadvantageous for that area. We also have a lot of people that have private land, so land that is not, long lease land and those kind of things. It needs to be advantageous for people that have private land as well. So with good dialogue and with a good vision on how to implement zoning is going to safeguard people's investments. So you're not going to build your fancy house and then It's going to, open up next to your house, which is going to be devaluing your real estate investment. So those are some of the things that that I plan to champion, and across the board, I support everything that the other candidates are championing as well. And our main goal is improving the quality of life on St. Maarten, which also has to do with providing stability in government. And this is something that St. Maarten needs, because we can have all of these nice plans and ideas, but if St. Maarten doesn't get a stable government, and it's just going to be a pipe dream.
Okay. All right, that's candidate number 2. Candidate number 1.
Yes, so I'm Melissa Gumbs, candidate number 1 on the Party for Progress. And to convince UG, I plan to champion education, but primarily the national literacy rate. I think that our people are at a disadvantage when they are not properly educated, not just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom as well. I also would like to champion when it particularly comes to increasing the purchasing power of the average consumer, adding to the basket of goods, not just food items, but also feminine hygiene products. So to eliminate the so-called pink tax, which is something that actually impacts women the world over, but very much so here on St. Maarten. And finally to that, I also champion, like Charlon mentioned, everything that the other candidates are focusing on. One of the things that I am a deep advocate for is communication and dialogue between the communities and government. And not in the sense of government having to do everything or set up programs for every issue that we are facing, but government can act as a facilitator. That is something that we have said at all our town hall meetings, and that is the purpose of government, to facilitate the existing programs that NGOs and NPOs have running in our communities, because they are the ones with the knowledge, the technical knowledge as well, to drive those things forward, whether it's education, whether it's recycling, whether it's environmental protection. Government is meant to act as a facilitator, and that is something that I, backed by PFP, am going to focus on. And again, with that, I'm candidate number 1 on the Party for Progress, Melissa Gumbs.
All right. Before we go, when's your next meeting?
Tomorrow at our headquarters in Cold Bay, Peterson Plaza, at 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
And we invite Cold Bay, K Bay, surrounding areas, and even if you're driving from over the hill, you feel the need to pass by, we definitely invite you to come and listen to what we have to say.
Even if you work in Phillipsburg.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can pop by, G.
Yeah.
All right. I'll see what I can do. Thank you guys. Party for Progress. Check out their website, pfp.sx, Vision, Strategy, Action. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Charlon, for coming by.
Thank you for having us.
12:38. We are feeling great. Take a commercial break. I'll be back with some more. Keep it right here. It's Laser 101.